Hello, welcome back. It's Christopher Taylor with Sovereign Harmony Astrology here to do the astrology for July 2026. We are now in the second half of 2026, which is crazy, but a lot going on here in July. A lot going on that's different in the second half of this year than the first half. And you can see this long list of things that are happening here in July alone. So we'll just get to it. Might as well dive on in. Okay, so first things first, we are starting the month with things with some energies that have already started in June. Okay, so one being Mercury retrograde. So yes, Mercury is retrograde right now as we speak. Turn retrograde on the 29th, and it will turn direct on the 23rd. We'll talk about that coming up here, and that is going to be entirely in Cancer. And so it's really a period of reevaluating, especially going back to the Jupiter retrograde that we had from November 2025 to March 2026. That covered pretty much the same zone of the zodiac, 16 to 26 degrees of Cancer. That was actually 15 to 25, but it's off by 1 degree. It's pretty close. So it's generally the same zone. So, whatever aspects to our charts that Jupiter made, over that period of time from the fall of last year up until this spring, Mercury's reviewing and reevaluating that. Okay, so we are getting some feelings from the past, some memories popping up, all for the purpose of kind of going over them and releasing them, because everything about not only this month but this month going forward is very future oriented. And so this is really the chance to just face the past and say, you know what, it is what it is. It's part of my story, but it's not going to come with me on my journey from here forward. So that is a big theme of the month. Again, it's going to be retrograde through the 23rd. Then we also have Jupiter squaring Chiron. So that's lasting roughly, a week and a half or so. And so Jupiter just entered Leo. Chiron just entered Taurus. So they're in new signs. And now they are forming this square to each other here exact on July 1st. That's today. Today's actually July 1st. 2026, but it started a few days earlier, and it's going to linger for about a week into July. And if you remember, we had a Jupiter square Chiron last fall, but that's when Jupiter was in Cancer and Chiron was in Aries. Okay, so it's a different energy signature, but similar kind of growth through facing wounds, etc. So really, this Jupiter square Chiron with Jupiter and Leo in Chiron Taurus has a lot to do with this sense of wanting to expand into our true expression and the idea of worthiness surrounding that. Okay, so that's a big theme, especially this first week of July, is really feeling that sense that there's more to us, more that we want to share, more that we want to express. There's a confidence growing, but it's also bringing up this sense of like, am I worth that? Can I really bring that? Can I bring that consistently, constantly? Is that something that I can sustain? Okay, so that Chiron and Taurus going to be all about worthiness. We have Chiron and Taurus for the next few months. In September, it'll back into Aries again for several months, and then in April of 2027, Chiron will take off. And speaking of Chiron, what is also doing here, as it's in the early degrees of Taurus, is it's trining. It's aspecting the moon's nodes. Okay, so it's going to trine the south node in Virgo, and it's going to sextile the north node in Pisces. Okay, and that's the true nodes. So that's active from June 28th, just a few days ago, all the way to the end of the month. So July 29th. So it's really again another theme. So Mercury retrograde being a strong theme for the month in Cancer, and this Chiron aspecting the moon's nodes. So the moon's nodes in great, in pure Mercury retrograde, spirit here, I forgot to add the fact that on July 26th, the true nodes are going to switch signs. That happens about once every 18 months or so, but it's going to happen here. Forgot to add it. Okay, so that's what happens when you put something together during Mercury retrograde. You're going to forget things, and I did forget, but I'll bring it up when we get there. But before the nodes change signs, they're in early Pisces, early Virgo, and then we've got Chiron in early Taurus, so it's forming this extensive aspect to the moon's nodes. So this is like a healing path. This month is very healing as we're bringing up the past for release, as we're challenging our worthiness with this confidence that wants to come out, this expression that wants to come out. There's a lot of healing that can happen this month, and that's what this is really suggesting, that we are facing these worthiness wounds for the purpose of trusting our path forward and releasing all that self-criticism that wants to come in. That's kind of part of this game that happens with a Chiron aspect in the nodes. So really, this month is a threshold month where we're just releasing and embracing through that through these these old wounds of our lack of worth or our perceived lack of worth, for example. So we're coming into this month with some energies happening, and most of this is going to linger on. The next thing we have is Neptune retrograde on July 7th. Okay, so if you recall, Neptune and Saturn, which are both going to turn retrograde this month, they join each other in late February at 0 degrees Aries. And that was a big, big deal. It's a once every 36 plus or minus year aspect, and it really sets the stage on a societal level, societal evolution in general. So like we had the last one was in 1989 in Capricorn, and that really set a precedent that we've seen up until recently. And now this Saturn Neptune conjunction in Aries sets this precedent of self-responsibility and bringing our whole selves into this light. And they're both going to turn retrograde. So they're pretty much, they've established what needs to be established so far, that now it's time to kind of digest that, kind of digest where we land as individuals in this new paradigm of energy. And this new paradigm of energy is represented by the outer planets, which we're going to get to in a minute here, all in their new signs for good. And so as Neptune retrogrades in Aries, Saturn retrogrades in Aries, they're not going to move back to Pisces. They're in Aries. So we really are just digesting what the implications are of what they set forth in February for this new foundation of societal evolution. Okay. So we're at a turning point. In other words, again, it's something that just makes July even more significant. Next, we got the new moon, July 14th, right in the middle of the month, 22 degrees Cancer. Take a look at that. So there's that new moon, both the sun and the moon there. Mercury is going to be retrograde still. Okay, so right in the middle of that retrograde, right in the middle of digging up the old memories and feelings, etc. And it's forming a pretty solid square there to Saturn and Aries. And just again, Saturn is about to turn retrograde, so it's stationary Saturn at this point. It's just a few days before it turns retrograde. And you can see Neptune is already retrograde here on the 14th, turns retrograde on the 7th. And so really this is about, again, really diving in. Okay, this new moon is about diving in deep, make sure that we're really absorbing the importance of this Mercury retrograde in Cancer, of getting at the past for the purpose of release so that we can move forward. And so we're taking responsibility, self-responsibility. That's at Saturn in Aries, and it can be challenging. This new moon is not without its challenges, because we can get lost in the past, and we can self-restrict ourselves because of the past and say, oh no, because this happened, I can't do this, right? And what this new moon is asking us to do is to say, well, no, you are in control of yourself, and the past is not in control of you. So this is an opportunity to see the past as what it is, and to realize that the now is not the past, and that we can make decisions, take responsibility for ourselves in the now, and we're not loyal to the past, in other words, right? We don't have to say, well, I learned my lesson, so I'm not going to do that again. In this case, it's saying, no, like release that lesson, right? And, act now in a way that is consistent with now, and forget about the past. So it could be this mid-month will be a little bit of a challenge again, but it goes along with that Chiron in the nodes theme that happens all month, and, alongside this Mercury retrograde. We're not going to get through this month without dealing with some wounds of worthiness. Are we worthy of what we want now? And even if the past had kind of proven that we weren't worthy of it in the past, right? Or at least that could have been our takeaway perception of it. So challenging new moon mid-month for sure. Then we get to this really special aspect. It's hard to state enough how significant this is. And so, I mean, I have exact here like 20th, 21st roughly, but really anytime from about mid-July to almost the end of July, 15th to 26th, we have what's called this Barbault Basket. Barbault is a French astrologer, okay? And it's just a description of the shape of a triangle in the sky, and we'll show that here. So very simply put, the Barbault Basket is what you see here, this trapezoid, okay? Right, so it's basically half, we get the opposition cutting the zodiac in half, and then on one side of the zodiac we have two planets equidistant, In this case, it is the outer planets. It is Pluto in its sign of Aquarius in the early degrees, Neptune in the early degrees of Aries, and Uranus in the early degrees of Gemini. So they're all at 4 degrees. And what do we have here to kind of complete the basket? Because that this is just a triangle, and that triangle is pretty rare too. I'll talk about that in just a sec. But the basket is completed by Jupiter. And so it's, I just had those dates from like the 15th to the 26th. That's just the time frame where Jupiter will be within a 1 degree orb of any one of these three planets. And so it'd be most potent then, but it really opens up, it's setting a basket. So it's opening up um, a vessel for catching things, right? And so this is really setting up the future, is what this is. These are all their new signs, anything that had to do with the past. And this is on a societal level, in our place in society. That's really that Jupiter in Leo, again, wanting to fully express what is my role here in this new paradigm energy of society, because we can think of these three outer planets as the evolution of society, etc. And what is my role? What is my true expression, my true role in this? And that is really what is trying to come into form here in July, or starting in July, really. But it's going to be pretty potent here, mid to late July. This triangle alone, if you just forget Jupiter for a second in the basket altogether, this triangle of the outer planets, it's extremely rare. We have not had these three planets, the three outer planets, in that triangle formation since the early 1940s. Okay, so and Jupiter was not involved at that time. So anybody alive today has never seen, the three outer planets all, in aspect to each other, in soft aspect to each other. So, pleasant, supportive aspect, while Jupiter is stimulating it. So what comes of this on a global level, and then how we fit into it personally is pretty interesting, because we just haven't really experienced it before. I mean, these outer planets have aspected each other at other times. So in the early 40s, we had a triangle like this, except that Uranus was on the other side of Pluto. I think it was Pluto and Leo, it was Pluto and Leo, Neptune in Libra, and Uranus was in Gemini, actually. Yeah, that's what it was in the early 1940s. So it's, here we are again, Uranus and Gemini, and it's forming that triangle. So if we go back, if we go forward, actually, from the 1940s, we get to the mid to late 1960s. That's the next time that all three planets were actually in aspect to each other. And in that case, Uranus was conjunct Pluto in Virgo, and they were both sextiling Neptune in Scorpio. And then the next time they were all aspect to each other was the early to mid 90s. And that was when Uranus then caught up to Neptune, and they were together in Capricorn, sextiling Pluto in Scorpio. Okay, and then this is now the next time after that. So it's the early 40s, they're all aspecting each other, mid to late 60s, early to mid 90s, and now here in the mid 2020s. Okay, does not happen often. I even have, if you go on my YouTube, you can go to some old webinar. I have a playlist for webinars and presentations, and there's one called The Power Generations. Talks all about these outer planets and that period from the mid to late 60s to the early mid 90s, and the people born in that window, and what their job essentially is on the planet. Everyone having an outer planet in Scorpio, essentially, in that group. And so, anyway, you can look at that. Go to my YouTube Against playlist. I think it's like a webinars, presentations. Power Generations is what it's called. It goes all over that. But in any case, this Barbault Basket is stimulating those outer planets, that the power generations are basically being stimulated into action. Okay, so if you're born between the mid to late 60s and the early to mid 90s, and there's another node in there when Uranus was in between Pluto and Neptune, and that was when Uranus was in Scorpio, and that's late 70s, early 80s, so right in the middle of that. But all those folks that have a mission, this is that Jupiter in Leo igniting the mission here with Barbault's Basket. Okay, so the power generations are coming alive. Next on the docket, we have Mercury direct on the 23rd. So at that point, which is interesting because that's right in the middle of the Barbault Basket. So as this activation is happening, as the power generations are being awakened to their true calling, their true expression, etc., Mercury turns direct. So we're basically saying, all right, we've cleaned up that past. I mean, Mercury's going to be in Cancer until early August, but we're done sifting through the mess, in a way, sifting through that past, what wants to come up. Now we have a better way of managing it, and we're more inspired to manage it because of this Barbault Basket and what it brings forth in us. Next, we have Saturn turning retrograde. Like I said, that's related to Neptune turning retrograde in Aries. So both of those planets that established that precedent in February with their conjunction at 0 degrees Aries. We've done enough. We're going to digest it a little bit, but now it's just time to let that move back for a bit. Also on July 26th, like I said, I forgot to add that the moon's nodes are going to change signs. So we're going to have the north node move from Pisces to Aquarius and the south node move from Virgo into Leo. And that is going to set up a whole another dynamic as we get later in the year, as Jupiter in Leo then approaches, these nodes, etc. So it's going to get interesting. So again, the second half of the year is a very different energy, and it is all about like, with the south node in Leo, north node in Aquarius. It's about again funneling our true expression into the outer world. Okay, and so this Barbault Basket, highlights that, stimulates that, and then the nodes change signs, and now it's like it's like you could feel like we're on a mission to really share what we came here to share, to change the world in the way that the world is being intended to change by our presence. Okay, so big changes here, second half of the year. Then finally we have full moon in Aquarius. And what we're going to see here is how this aligns up with that Barbault Basket. So the Barbault Basket's still kind of hanging on at that point. It's just about to break apart as Jupiter is moving on from that 4 degrees. There's still, the outer planet is still at 4 degrees. Jupiter's, still within a couple degrees. So it's not completely broken yet. So this full moon kind of gives us a grand finale of the Barbault Basket, in my opinion. And that moon's going to be right on Pluto. Jupiter and the Sun are going to be in a conjunction. That's a very auspicious conjunction in general. And this full moon is going to be squaring Chiron in early Taurus. So not only is the Barbault Basket stimulated, but we have that, again, that woundedness being stimulated, something that, again, is in the back burner all month, this healing wounds of worthiness, okay? So this full moon is really like it's that finale. It's the reality, okay, now what am I going to do with what I now am aware of, okay? So it's a want to put it out there. Okay, so very strong impulse to put it out there. This is a could be a life-changing full moon in a lot of ways, life transforming. What's happening? We're just transforming into the who we have to be for the future that is in front of us now. So some big shifts and realizations that can happen this month for sure. We're just really just building for the future, and we kind of know where that future is headed by the time we get to the end of the month. If we've been confused about it, this Mercury retrograde is going to help us sift through the past, and just in time so we can realize what we're doing in the future. Okay, that's really what it comes down to. And then the last thing on the list that we have here is at the very last few days of July, Venus will be in Virgo, squaring Mars in Gemini. And this goes back, so the Venus-Mars cycle started with their conjunction back in early January. The first few days of January this year, there was a Venus-Mars-Sun conjunction, actually the triple conjunction in Capricorn. And so that started this creative cycle. And so now we have this like creative tension, okay? And because Venus is going to turn retrograde here in October into November, this square to Mars is going to come back and forth over the coming months. So we have a 1 degree orb square in late July. We'll have another one in early to mid-October, and then we're going to have one around mid-January of 2027. So the Venus square Mars coming off of the original conjunction from January 2026, that's not going to fully resolve until January 2027. So there's creative tension here from late July into January, really. We can look at it that way. And it's associated with the Venus retrograde that we'll have. That'll go from Scorpio back into Libra, starting in, I think it's October 1st, I believe, and right into mid-November. So whatever projects, creations, relationships that are brewing or have been brewing since the beginning of this year, they're coming up for manipulation, for transformation, for any kind of deliberation, figuring out what we want to do with it, essentially. And that's going to take several months. By the time we get to the start of 2027, we should have that figured out. But anyway, so that sums it up. So lots going on. Like I said, we're pulling in some energy from June that's going to linger through most of the month. We've got a challenging new moon in there that's just making us get rid of the past and understand that we are in control of ourselves now. Barbault Basket really stimulating those folks in the power generations into action. Like, what is our true expression? Just as that happens, Mercury turns direct. Okay, we got the full moon in Aquarius that says, okay, now that we've sifted through the past, there's some strong realizations about where we're headed in the future. And then finally, we are, working with some creative tension, um, because we got to figure out, where we want to land it, and we'll have it figured out by the end of the year after that Venus retrograde. So to sum it up, we're reevaluating. We're on a healing path this month, and we are future building for sure. So if you have any questions, please let me know. If you're looking for a personal reading, see where all this fits in your chart, please let me know as well. We can set that up. Other than that, please feel free to follow me on my more weekly posts and daily posts and things like that if you want more updates. Otherwise, take care, and we'll see you next month.